Hey guys, welcome back to my channel as we discuss the other new launch that is expected to preview in April as well. So if you have been following the market, yes, that's right, we are going to talk about Tengah Garden Residences. It is expected to preview on the same day as Villa Bay as we hear from the developers right now. But of course, this is still not yet confirmed, so do hold and wait a little bit more while we get the official confirmation. And why this project actually is appearing on paper to be very in demand. The main reason is because that many people believe that this project is potentially going to be one of the cheapest new launch in 2026. And in fact, I do think that there is a possibility it might even be one of the cheapest project even when we bring in 2025 new launch into the picture. Right, so let's talk a bit more about the pros and why people are seriously considering Tengah despite it being a pretty much new township. As we do know, the BTOs HDBs has only just TOP sometime in 2023, so that is about 3 years back. We do not know yet when exactly how the demand will go, whether the HDB upgraders would actually, really want to continue living in Tengah. But what we do know is that in the master plan that the government has already planned out, this is somewhat an interesting new township. It is very near to Jurong East and Bukit Batok West. This is really a new township that is a bit reminding you of Punggol, which I covered in my last video, whereby a lot of the early first movers in the HDB market are potentially considering that they will be expecting significantly high profits when they do exit their HDBs when it MOPs in another 2 to 3 years time. So this interesting part of Tengah is that it is actually supposed to be a more car-like town. In fact, the Novo Place, one of the ECs that launched sometime in the last 2 years, they actually launched the project with only about 50% of car park lots. That was really something very interesting, and I do know of many buyers who were like kind of turned off by this whole thing. But that is kind of like the direction the government is going in, at least for Tengah. So we shall wait and see how Tengah Garden Residences is going to be like. When we talk about a new township and all that, many people do expect that the amenities might be lacking. They might kind of expect that this is not really the place they envisage people to live in, not somewhere that there will be own stay demand. And you might be thinking that only investors will be looking at this because of the potential, lower entry quantum price. But let's take a step back and see why some of the reasons why some people are actually seriously considering this project right now. Right, so of course, for starters, we do know that this is a very interesting first mover potential advantage in the sense that this is going to be the first private new launch in Tengah area itself. Based on just looking at the master plan, we do know that there are many residential plots that have not yet been confirmed whether they will be HDBs, condos, ECs, or whatever it might be. But for a fact, we do know that it is going to be a residential plot, right? And so when we do look at Tengah Garden Residences itself, we do note that it is actually right beside Hongkar MRT station. This is going to be part of the Jurong region line that enhances connectivity throughout Tengah itself. So despite the fact that this is a new township, you might not be expecting much connectivity, the good news is that there will be an MRT station directly connected to your project. And of course, if you look at the master plan itself, you'll realize that there's actually a water body there, so you kind of have a potential river facing kind of view that would likely attract a lot of own stay buyers who really love to have this kind of coastal seaside living kind of view. And I mean, this is something that isn't there right now, so if you do go to the actual site, you probably wouldn't see any river or water bodies or anything like that. So that's a very interesting point, right? And of course, early on I did mention that this is kind of like an investor haven given that the potential entry price is very low. The main reason really is because that Hong Leong actually only got the land at $821 PSF PPR. That is really relatively cheap compared to what we saw for Villa Bay, which was acquired for 1,300 PSF and then higher. So we do expect that the potential starting from price might be around 2001, 2002 PSF. That is really something that is kind of unheard of in today's market, I would say. Definitely there were a few projects last year that started from that kind of prices, but Tengah being the first private new launch, that might be something worth keeping an eye on. So given that the land bid price was considerably lower, a lot of people are betting on the fact that most of the units will not see very huge jump in prices even as they load up the floors and whatnot. And of course, we do know for a fact that the government has committed to making Jurong Innovation District, Jurong Lake District, the next second CBD, which is also why I did see some demand recently for Sora and Lake Garden Residences. So I'm not going to cover that two areas in this video today, but probably in another video on why potentially these two projects are worth considering, depending on what is your profile and what is your end goal essentially. But for now, let's just focus on Tengah. So we do know for a fact that Jurong Lake District is going to be redeveloped. It's going to be the next CBD. It is not too far from the One North Business Park area. So we do know for a fact that if you're an investor, your budget is limited, you might be looking at a 1 or 2 bedrooms at this kind of entry price PSF 2001, 2002. It actually creates an interesting proposition whereby you could potentially be getting something that isn't too expensive in today's market. At the same time, you do know that there will be steady rental demand, which kind of allows you to have an overall higher rental yield and less worry about having any empty months whereby there will be no tenants. And of course, we do know that ACS Primary is going to move from Barker Road over to Tengah by 2030. So that is something that really will help boost the resale prices, as we do know that there are really quite a few projects in Singapore that resale value is really very strong. For example, let's talk about 100 Palms EC, which is kind of like in the middle of nowhere. To me, I don't feel that it's very central or very accessible, but it is right beside or very near to Rosyth Primary School, and that actually gives you very strong resale value and some owners that actually make profits upwards of more than 1 million. How insane is that? And of course, we do have like even UWC, the Dover campus. They actually announced that they're going to relocate into Tengah by 2032 as well. So that is all very interesting news when you do start to see like more shopping malls are coming up, more schools are relocating in. You do kind of get a feeling that the government is focusing on making this Tengah area a lot more livable. And given this good news, I would say, of having more schools around the area, it does kind of boost the rental demand, it does kind of boost the own stay livability as well. So I believe all of these reasons are really some of the very key reasons why Singaporeans, investors, they're all starting to look at this project with great interest, given that potentially if the price is right, it might be a no-brainer just to enter. And of course, we do know for a fact that the EC demand in Tengah has been relatively strong. During the second timer balloting, we do know that Copen Grand, the first Tengah EC, they achieved 73% sales. That was kind of like just slightly past COVID, or still during the late aftermath of COVID. So we do get why that might be a bit more risk averse, and it's really a very new township. But let's move forward a bit to 2024. We see Novo Place hitting 88.1% sales in the second timer round balloting. Auto Place in 2025, they actually sold 91% during the second timer balloting. So this kind of gives you the impression that actually there are enough people that are looking at living in Tengah, and they do feel that this is potentially okay to live in the late 2030s or late 2020s, I should say. Yeah, so definitely this shows that the healthy own stay demand is there. People do believe that this area is profitable if the price is right, because we do know that ECs for a fact tend to give you greater price appreciation given that you'll be entering at lower PSF. But then again, taking a look back at the lower land bid cost, we do kind of expect that potentially Tengah Garden Residences would be launching close to the EC prices we are seeing all the way in Tampines. Yep, so that is something very interesting. So keep it at the top of your head while you analyze this project. So now let's move on to why there might be certain areas or certain issues that you might want to take a think back and think whether it actually makes sense. So of course, we do know that while there's a lot of amenities redevelopment there, there's going to be new primary school over there, the land bid cost is lower, there's strong EC take up. So on paper, this area actually has a lot going for it, but here's where people might be oversimplifying things. So just take note that when we are buying into this project, you're not really buying to what Tengah is today, but rather what we believe Tengah to be in the future. So unlike other areas, this is really a new township. You're really buying the first private residential condo. Yes, you might have first mover advantage, but at the same time, you do not know what or how big this advantage is going to be. Essentially, there is no private resale benchmark to compare against. To be very honest, the newest condo in the area or neighborhood, I should say, is really probably Le Quest at Bukit Batok West. But then Yep, that project isn't doing that well, to be very honest with you. But that project has its own flaws, so we do not know whether Tengah Garden Residences is going to end up like that. In the Jurong area, we do not have that many new condos that I feel is worthy of a comparison as of now. Of course, we do know that Jayden, which is like directly connected or very near to Jurong East MRT, that actually hit above 2,800 PSF. Yep, so we do have some kind of a bit of safety buffer, but then again, it is not really, within Tengah. And at the same time, you might be thinking that there are a lot of BTOs, upgraders, potential upgraders in the area, given how the government has been launching and pushing out lots and lots of HDBs in the Tengah area. But at the same time, back to my question, how many people actually know whether the Tengah BTOs would really fetch a good price? Of course, it might not be the most expensive on the market. There might be some demand, given that people might not mind living in a new township and whatnot. But how do we know how much these HDBs can actually fetch on the open market? There's absolutely no benchmark. There's not a single MOP HDB in that estate. When we look across the road to Bukit Batok West, there isn't really super strong profits or selling price that we can use to compare and be safely assured that whatever price we enter in will allow us to exit comfortably at the time we want to. So always take a step back, think about what's your timeline, what's your end goal, whether you are going to safely achieve that or there might be some risk involved, right? So I mean, obviously, if it's going to enter at 2001, 2002 PSF, I would say you are generally still very safe when you look at the comparing, overall Singapore kind of trajectory in terms of property prices. Definitely there would be a buyer, but if let's say you are going to target to exit at a 2006, 2007, 2008 PSF, because you believe that buying 2001 at a cheaper price in today's market would serve you good in the long run, you might actually want to take a step back and reconsider that. Yep. And so, of course, going back to the master plan where I show you there's so many residential plots, definitely you might feel that you are going to be the first mover advantage, you have some sort of advantage, but take a step back and also kind of analyze and think that, this actually means that with the number of potential residential plots in future, your future buyer would also have a lot more choices, right? And of course, if you want to compare with the ECs, I think only Copen Grand might MOP around the same time as when your SSD would pass and you're able to sell off. So those are probably your closest competitor, and you have to look at the PSF that the sellers bought in back then versus what they can potentially fetch. So of course, every project is slightly different. It really depends. You have to have a deeper look at the floor plan layout and whatnot. But yeah, in general, I would say that while the entry price does look attractive, entering a new township also looks attractive and potentially might bring you bigger rewards. You have to be wary of these potential risks that a lot of people are missing and simplifying because they believe that the entry PSF is low enough to take the risk. So tell me, how much do you think you are going to exit at if you do enter Tengah Garden Residences at 2001 PSF in the comment below? I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, and then if you would like a more in-depth analysis, especially including stack analysis, floor plan analysis, feel free to reach out in the comments below. Alright, see you guys.